Okay. Huh. Let me check that. Okay, I'm gonna stop stream. I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute so I can check that. Um, oh, I don't know. It gave everybody a zero for Circle of Life. I don't know why. Um, and it might be because I only had 1 day um a due date on it. So I will take the due date off and make the due date today. And then that'll take all those zeros off because it gave everybody a zero. Um, and it'll do that. I don't put zeros in the grade book. What it will automatically do if the due date has arrived and there is no grade in the grade book, Infinite Campus automatically puts a zero. So what I need to do so that everybody doesn't have a zero is change the due date. So that's what I'm going to do. All righty. So that is done. Save. Okay. All right. So if you had a zero, I'm going to refresh my page to see if that all disappeared. And then if you haven't done your Circle of Life, uh, is due today. Okay. It took this. Ooh, no, it didn't. Well, I have Circle of Life in two places, and I don't know why. Okay, I'm going to take one of these out. All right, so this is what I need you to do. It's for some reason it's in two places in my grade book, and you got zero in two places. So so I need you to take a minute to resubmit your um, Circle of Life if you've done it. Just give me 1 second to get rid of the second column. All right, so the column that I got rid of is where most of you submitted. So I need you to go in and check and resubmit in. Okay, hold on. All right, so everybody needs to go back and look at their Circle of Life assignment except for Liliana. Liliana, yours is in the right place, so you're good. Everybody else needs to go back and repost their no, don't watch that video. I'm going to show it in class. I did add a video to the discussion box. Don't watch that. I'm going to show that in class. I just put it there as a placeholder for myself. We're going to watch that. So we are going to look at the points that are brought up in the Circle of Life diagram that you had. So everybody needs to look at that anyway. Take a minute to answer that question again, because I believe I deleted the column that most of you had submitted your answers to, because it was in the grade book twice and everybody had a zero. So Let's fix that. Before we start anything else, let's fix that assignment. And I don't know why it was in the grade book twice, but it is. So now it's not. But the column that's left is the one that is not where you posted. So let's fix that. All right, and that column is now open until tomorrow, so you have time to adjust that. Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, I see some of you have done that. Good. All right, so I'll give you about 5 minutes to do that. While you're doing that, I'll do attendance. And then when I finish attendance, we'll come back to the page on energy. We're going to look at law of thermodynamics. We're going to watch a short video talking about energy cycles, and then we will finish talking about law of conservation of energy. I mean, law of conservation of energy is the video on your page. So if you want to take a look at that, you can. And then I'm going to share another video that talks about energy cycling through an ecosystem. So that is the plan for the morning. So go ahead and um, repost your answer for the circle of life. Okay. As soon as I finish attendance, we'll look at Canvas. What happens is the way they have it, we have to create the assignment in one place, and then when I try to move it to the module, it duplicates. So I have to figure out a way for it not to do that. Okay. All right. Nobody else is coming. So after this, anybody else is late. Oh, I think everybody's here today. Yay. That made attendance real easy. All right. So again, if you've already done the circle of life, you've got to do it again, except for Liliana, because the column that you submitted to the first time has been deleted and it deleted your post. So you have to repost. So please take the next 2 minutes to do that. Now, what you can do is watch the video that is on the page. So if that's the video, Amani, that you're asking me about, yes, you may. Oh. Okay, so we talked about energy is the ability to do work, and that it is a force that causes things to move. And we talked about there are two types of energy, kinetic and potential. So again, if you click on these um, little um, information buttons, they give you the definition. So again, you need energy is the ability to do work or bring about change. And in an ecosystem, and this is where we're going to spend most of our focus, because there are several different forms of energy. Where our focus in an ecosystem is going to be on light energy, heat energy, and chemical energy that is stored in the bonds of molecules. So today we're going to look at the definition of thermodynamics, the study of energy and work being done in a system such as an ecosystem. Okay. So again, potential energy is stored energy. The energy is there, but it's not being used. It's not at work, but it's there. It's a source. So when we have gasoline, gasoline is stored energy. Not until you put it in your car or in a motor is it being used. So it gets converted to kinetic energy. And kinetic energy is the energy of motion or something that is moving. Okay, so again, we put the gasoline that was stored into a motor and the motor starts to move because now it has an energy source. Okay, all right. Now, one of the most important laws in science, period, is the law of conservation of energy in the universe. And I'll just let the video talk and then I'll add, add after.
she rests for a moment on the bar, the energy has gone back into the bar as lasting energy, storing her energy until she's ready to spring back into the air. As kinetic energy, the potential energy of gravity and the elastic energy of the bar are changing throughout the act. But the key thing to note is the total amount of energy does not change. She's fantastic. When I watch on it makes me thankful for the fact.
Okay. Basically, what the video is trying to show you is that energy is constantly being cycled. It's being stored, it's being released, it's stored, it's released, and it's been stored and released in different ways. When you move, when you're sitting, the breakfast you ate this morning, you stored some energy. When you get up to go walk, you release that energy because the energy was converted into the cells of your body, and now it is giving it's ready to be released. Sorry, thank you. Okay. So I was saying the video is showing you that energy is cycled. It's cycled. It's going from one type of energy to another type of energy. And what she was doing, and they showed different places too. The bar bends, and because the bar bends like an elastic band, and they call that elastic energy, the fact that it bent, and then when it springs back into place, it propelled her into the air. So her adding her force to it, the force of gravity, also pulls down the energy from her stored in that bin, and then when it's released, it gave her energy. So it was transformed and cycled over and over again. So the law of conservation of energy states that, and I think if you go back to, let me go back to your, hold on, your module page with your definitions. Make sure that you write this definition down. So the first page is always our definition page. And it's not on there. They've got, there it is. Passed right by it. The law of conservation of energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, but it is converted from one form to another. Okay. All right, so we're going to look at another video that's going to discuss the law of thermodynamics. In all energy, if no energy enters or leaves the system, the potential energy of the state will always be less than the initial, and that is referred to as entropy. And then down here, they talk about entropy is a measure of the amount of energy in a system that is not available for doing work, or disordered or unuseful energy, often dissipated as heat. So when we look at our systems and our energy pyramid, we're always going to be looking at the fact that heat is released, and that amount of heat energy that is released is not available to the next level in our food pyramid. So keep these two words in mind as we look at the next set of videos. All right, so let's go back.
First law of thermodynamics is also known as the law of conservation of energy. The law of conservation of energy states that energy can be transformed from one form to another, but it can be created or destroyed. The total amount of energy stays the same, but will change forms.
Okay, so the important part about law of conservation means save, to save. So that means we're saving all the energy in the system that we use. It's just recycled over and over again. All right, it says that it's unusable. It's unusable in that system, but we release, like our bodies really radiate heat, and the heat is going into the environment. It is heating the environment. It is not useless, but it's useless to us as far as where we're getting our energy from. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to share a video that's going to continue to talk about this.
Energy go. Most of the energy is lost as heat. The energy
Okay. Yep.
living things need energy. Some living factors, also called biotic factors, get their energy from the sun. Others get their energy by eating other living factors. And some living things, like decomposers, break down once living things and recycle nutrients. Welcome to Moving Math and Science, the energy flow in an ecosystem. As a result, energy is always flowing in an ecosystem. This flow of energy can be represented with food chains and food webs. For most ecosystems, the ultimate energy source is the sun. However, there are some organisms that get their energy from reactions involving inorganic chemicals. And typically, this involves the absence of sunlight. This is called chemosynthesis. Producers, which use photosynthesis or chemosynthesis to create their energy, are a major source of energy in any ecosystem. All plants are examples of producers. Consumers, like the krill, eat the producers. Carbon bonds are broken and energy is released. And this energy is transferred from one trophic level to another. The cod eat the krill, and their energy of the krill is passed on to the cod. The seal eats the cod, and then the orca eats the seal. As you move from one trophic level to another, you lose approximately 90% of the energy. This is known as the 10% rule. For example, if you start with 10,100 kilocalories and move up trophic levels, by the time you get to the hulk, only 1 kilocalorie is transferred to the hulk. So where does this energy go? Most of the energy is lost as heat. The energy flow in an ecosystem follows the laws of thermodynamics. The first law states that energy cannot be created or destroyed in an isolated system. However, it can be converted from one form to another. The second law states that this energy conservation is never completely efficient, and as a result, most energy is lost as heat. Thanks for watching, and remember, kindness multiplies kindness. Kind to someone today.
Okay. On mine, a second video followed. Let me see if it's the right one here. Yeah.
Welcome to the PetSmart Kitchen. I'm excited to give you a behind-the-scenes look at how I prepare.
Hello, Bee here. Welcome back to biology. Do you remember back in one of our first lessons in this course when we introduced the topic of ecology by taking a look at the wolf population in Yellowstone National Park? When the wolves were removed from Yellowstone, the whole ecosystem collapsed in what is known as a trophic cascade. This is because the wolves were a keystone species, and the whole food web depended on their survival. Today, we'll take a closer look at food webs and how they show the transfer of energy through an ecosystem. But before we get started, let's take a look at our goals for this lesson. By the end, you'll be able to explain the importance of producers to the energy flow within ecosystems. Explain the flow of energy in an ecosystem as depicted on a food web. And explain how trophic levels are organized within ecosystems.
Yeah, I'm trying to turn, I think because I tried to turn on the, all right, while this is buffering, there we go.
All living things need energy. Can you think of any ways that organisms get energy? You probably just thought food. In a strict biological sense, food is nutrients in the form of organic carbon compounds. Living things can either make food from inorganic carbon sources, such as carbon dioxide, or they can eat organic carbon molecules in the form of other organisms. Because of this fundamental difference, organisms are grouped based on their method of obtaining food. Producers, like plants, make organic carbon compounds from carbon dioxide and sunlight. Consumers, like humans and other animals, eat organic carbon compounds that were once part of another living thing. Producers, also known as autotrophs, form the foundation of every food chain on Earth.
All right, I'm going to pause it there for a minute just so that you are paying attention. All of these words are vocabulary words. So producers, consumers, you need to know what they are and who is a producer and who is a consumer and the different types of consumers. So please pay attention as she goes through highlighting all of these vocabulary words.
Is because they are the only organisms that turn inorganic carbon compounds into organic compounds. Most producers do this through photosynthesis, which, as you hopefully remember, requires sunlight. However, there are some organisms that can do chemosynthesis, which creates organic carbon molecules using energy derived from chemical reactions that don't need sunlight. The organic molecules made by producers will eventually be transferred up the food chain as these organisms are eaten. Even your body is built by organic molecules that were originally made by a producer. So, this means that consumers like you and me depend on the nutrients made by producers because we cannot make the basic organic compounds needed using only inorganic sources. In simple terms, we have to eat food. We're not alone in this dilemma, though. All animals, fungi, and many protists and bacteria are consumers as well. Consumers, which are also known as heterotrophs, are often grouped into herbivores and carnivores. Herbivores eat producers, such as plants, while carnivores eat other consumers. So are humans carnivores or herbivores? If you follow a vegetarian diet, you would be considered an herbivore. However, if you eat meat, does that make you a carnivore? After all, eating meat means eating other animals, and animals are consumers. Technically, though, carnivores only eat meat, and humans, as well as many other animals, need at least some plant material in their diet. So we are part of a large category known as omnivores, which eat both producers and consumers. Or we could think of it as eating both plants and animals. You may even remember learning about the different teeth shapes of herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores in a previous lesson.
Hey kids, you in elementary school like us? Do you love science? Well, we love science.
Another category of consumers is the detritivores. These are decomposers that eat and break down dead organisms, which could be either producers or consumers. Many worms and insects are detritivores, and these organisms are vital to the ecosystem. Without them, organic nutrients would not be broken down into the building blocks needed by other species to survive. We've established some important facts already, that all living things need energy, and that energy comes from organic carbon-based molecules. These organic molecules, which are first made by producers, will be passed on to other organisms as the producers are eaten. This means that energy is a one-way flow through ecosystems. It always begins with the producers and works its way up the food chain. But what exactly is a food chain? You've almost certainly heard the term. Do you know what it means? It is simply a series of steps that show the energy transfer as one organism is eaten by another organism. Let's take a look at a simple food chain. At the bottom, we have the plants, our producers. They are eaten by a deer, who is a consumer, and an herbivore. The deer is then eaten by the wolf, who is a carnivore consumer. After the wolf dies, it is decomposed by fungi growing in the soil. Notice the direction of the arrows. They show the transfer of energy in the food chain. The energy from the plant goes into the deer, so the arrow points from the plant to the deer. But surely the deer wouldn't be the only animal that eats the plants. To show all of the energy transactions that could go on in an ecosystem, we'll need a food web. Notice how much more complex a food web is than a food chain. The plants may be eaten by the grasshoppers, birds, or squirrels. The bird might also eat the grasshopper in addition to eating the plants. Food webs attempt to show all of the possible ways that energy can transfer in an ecosystem, while food chains show a single path inside a food web. Within a food web, organisms are grouped into trophic levels, which show the function that the organism serves in a food chain. It is easiest to think of trophic levels as a pyramid. Notice that it all starts with light energy, so that photosynthesis can produce the original organic molecules. The producers make up the bottom of the pyramid, with primary consumers just above. Primary consumers are the herbivores, the animals that eat the plants. At the next trophic level, we have the secondary consumers, which would be the carnivores, animals that eat other animals. At the top of the pyramid, we have tertiary consumers, who are also carnivores. The difference? They eat other carnivores, not herbivores. In rare cases, there could be another level above this, the quaternary consumers. Any idea why this is rare? Notice the numbers in each level. The producers make use of 100% of the food they make. When they are eaten by primary consumers, only 10% of that energy is passed on. Then, only 10% of the energy from the primary consumers passes to the secondary consumers. By the time we get to the top of the pyramid, there's not much energy left. So being a top-level carnivore is actually rather inefficient in terms of energy transfer. This is because organisms use much of their energy for life processes and can't pass it on in the food chain. It then gets converted to heat and escapes into the environment. Do you remember learning about the different kingdoms of life? What kingdom made up the vast majority of living things when measured by mass? Plants. This is necessary because producers, like plants, are the bottom of the trophic level pyramid. And it takes a lot of plant mass to support all of the other life on the planet. But what about the top of the pyramid? It's less efficient to be at the top because so little energy makes it all the way up there. But some animals make it work, and they are known as apex predators. Animals such as orcas, lions, polar bears, and wolves have no natural predators, so they only worry about what they will eat, not whether they will get eaten by something else. Some apex predators are also keystone species, like the wolves in Yellowstone. This means that despite their relatively low abundance in the ecosystem, they have a large effect on the ecosystem's stability. And if they are suddenly removed, the whole food web can collapse in a trophic cascade, as we saw happen in Yellowstone. Another example of a trophic cascade occurred in the 1800s when overhunting of sea otters led to the destruction of kelp forests off the coast of Alaska. How could removing sea otters from the food chain destroy the kelp forests? Let's look at a food web to find out. One of the sea otter's favorite things to eat is the sea urchin. With the sea otters nearly gone from aggressive hunting by humans, the population of sea urchins exploded. And what do sea urchins eat? Kelp. There wasn't nearly enough kelp to support the growing sea urchin population, and the kelp forests were nearly destroyed. This had a negative impact on the crabs and other small fish who depended on the kelp for food as well, and also used their leaves as a habitat and as protection from other predators. So removing a keystone species, in this case the sea otter, can have detrimental effects for the whole ecosystem. Keystone species help keep ecosystems in balance and keep the energy flowing through each level of the food web. As we went through the lesson today, we learned that organisms are classified as either producers or consumers, and that each has a role to play in the energy pyramid. But remember, energy all starts with the sun and photosynthesis. The molecules made there carry energy up the food chains to primary, secondary, and even tertiary consumers. In the lesson PDF, you'll practice creating a food web and classify various organisms into the appropriate trophic levels. Next time, we'll look at the way ecosystems are structured and define several levels of ecological organization.
All right. So she basically went through your whole vocabulary list and defined most of the things that we're going to deal with. So you are going to be expected to be able to look at a food web and identify. In fact, I might do that before the class ends today, give you a food web and ask you to identify at least 2 food chains. But she said some key things that I want to go back. First of all, she pointed out that all energy starts with the sun. All energy. I think maybe when you were in physical science, when they talked about energy conversions from one type of system to another, everything started with the sun. Okay, sorry, we did that one already. That's not the one I want. Okay, and we're actually going to skip that one, but we'll come back to that later. All right, so on the next page, if you skip in your Canvas course, go to the next page, and we're going to look at this here. So she talked about these 2 terms here, trophic levels, autotrophs and heterotrophs. So write those down, make sure that you know what those are. Autotroph, if you take the beginning of the word auto, it means self. So autotrophs are self-feeders. They make their own food. Heterotrophs have to get their energy from outside. So they have to consume their food. So make sure you understand the difference between an autotroph and a heterotroph. And again, the vocabulary is important because if you're given a diagram and you're going to be asked to explain which organism in the diagram is an autotroph, which organisms are heterotrophs, which ones are consumers, what kind of consumers are they? So vocabulary for this unit is very, very important. Okay. All right. So this is how we talk about the energy. Notice the picture at the top is talking about, it looks like the arrows are just flowing back and forth. And again, it's indicating that energy is cycled throughout an ecosystem. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, someone asked me to re-explain what troph means. Troph means to eat. That's the simplest way, or feeding, or as the word up here in the paragraph says, to nourish. So that's what troph is. So when you put auto in front of it, that's self-feeding or self-nourishing. And they, in other words, make their own foods. They don't need to get their food from outside. They make their own food. So there, another word for that is our producers. Our producers are the plants, because plants are the only organism on the planet that can make their own food. So plants are autotrophs. They are self-feeders. So they make the food, they make the glucose, and we're going to look at the equations for photosynthesis and respiration in a minute. They make their own food, but then they're going to take the food that they make and then they're going to use it for their energy processes. Okay. The next one I'm sure is going to talk about heterotrophs. Okay. So that's important. And we're going to look at the equation for photosynthesis. We're always going to talk about what does the equation need? It needs carbon dioxide, it needs water, and it needs sunlight. Okay. Okay. So again, troph means to feed or to get your food or to nourish. Hetero means other way, not auto, not doing self. They have to gain their food from another source. So they are consumers. They have to consume. They have to take it in. Okay. And there are different ways to consume. There are those that only eat plants. So notice all of these words end in vor. So the vor part of it means how they eat, but herbs mean plants. A herbivore eats plants. Carnivore, think of canines, or carnivorous. They eat animals, I mean meat only, other animals, but not plants. Those that eat both plants and animals, the prefix omni means um, everything, all things. So they eat plants and animals. And then the decomposers, as you saw in the other video, they are the most important ones because technically they are omnivores too, because they break down both the plants and the animals. And so they're connected on all parts of our food chain. If things didn't die, the nutrients stored in the bodies of the plant or the animal would not get recycled. And remember, we are recycling energy all of the time. So decomposers are the most important organisms in our food web and food chains. All right, so we said we're going to look at photosynthesis. And I'm probably will pause this so that you can write the equations down. So be ready to do that.
As you know, life is made of carbon. See how the element carbon is taken in as carbon dioxide by plants, used, reused by all living things, or being respired back into the environment. Carbon dioxide once again. So let's start with the gas carbon dioxide. know how much there is of it in the air? Well, the air contains nearly 0.04% carbon dioxide. Hundreds of years ago, before we started using fossil fuels, 0.28%. Not much, but enough to enable plants to build up all the structures they need. Water and minerals they take up roots and energy from the sun. Plants use the sunlight to pull oxygen away from water and carbon dioxide, allowing the plant to capture the carbon. This happens in the green chloroplasts found in the leaves of plants. What is the name for this reaction? Chemical reaction.
Okay, I'm pausing it for you to write down the word photosynthesis. So everybody write photosynthesis. And then I'll pause it again once he gives you the chemical equation.
Photosynthesis. Photo means light. Synthesis means building up. However, in simplest terms, we are actually breaking carbon dioxide apart, releasing the reactive gases. Environment, be captured by the plants and structures. Animals, in turn, get carbon by eating all this in order to fuel living processes. Plants and animals take back rejoin with the carbon, releasing carbon dioxide from the environment. This energy releasing process.
All right. Skip a line so that you have space to write the equation and then write respiration.
Respiration. Here is a simple representation of the process. First of all, sunlight breaks the bonds, allowing the carbon dioxide and water. Carbohydrate.
All right, so I'm going to pause it right there. What I want you to write in that space I said leave in between, I want you to write water plus carbon dioxide, draw an arrow, that means yields. And instead of writing the word carbohydrate, I want you to write glucose plus oxygen. So the formula for photosynthesis is water plus carbon dioxide plus sunlight energy. So we want to see that little arrow with the sun. We want to add, you can write, and most people write sunlight over the arrow. So just write sunlight over the arrow. But water plus carbon dioxide plus sunlight energy will give you glucose plus oxygen. All right, that's an equation. You're going to have to know this equation. All right, I got two people off camera and got one person. I'm looking at the ceiling. I hope you're writing this down because you have to know this equation. All right, I'm going to let it continue. And I tell you why he did that, because well, like when we, no, that's biology. We look at what a carbohydrate molecule is made of. There are different kinds of carbohydrates. So if we broke it down to its simplest form, it simply would be carbon connected to a water molecule, several carbons connected to however very many water molecules. That's the simple definition of a carbohydrate. But in particular, during photosynthesis, the carbohydrate that is made is glucose.
That's photosynthesis. Energy is stored and big things can use carbohydrates to cool down. reverse this reaction. Join.
Okay, now underneath where you wrote respiration, all we're doing is looking at the same equation backwards. So underneath the word respiration, write glucose, don't write carbohydrate, write glucose plus oxygen. So this is where we take in the oxygen from the atmosphere. So the glucose came from the food you ate that was stored in the plant or the animal that you ate. And you're combining it with the oxygen that you take in from the atmosphere. And then you have molecules inside your body called ATP. So write energy, but also next to it, write ATP, capital A, capital T, capital P. An ATP molecule is an energy molecule. Okay? So you need energy to break up these bonds and make recombination. And here again, we are this is the equation for respiration, yes. So you wrote, so you should have, you were doing what I asked you to do, you should have written word photosynthesis, then you wrote the equation, and then you wrote respiration, and then you're going to write this equation underneath respiration. All right, so the glucose plus water plus energy, which breaks up those bonds and rearranges them, will release water. So when we exhale, we release water vapor and carbon dioxide. Okay. And again, these are cycled, they're put back into the atmosphere. And so nothing got lost.
Let's look at these two processes more closely. They both need catalysts.
All right, catalyst is an important vocabulary word. Catalyst is a substance that doesn't get added to the materials that you're making, but the reaction would not take place without it. They are important to start or speed up a reaction.
These catalysts also need a pigment called magnesium the brain absorb blue and red light. The reaction takes place by a number of complex stages. It's a reaction which evolved early on in the lifetime of green algae, also known as cyanobacteria, still alive today, living in chloroplasts find in the green plants evolved. If only we could find a way to use sunlight to split carbon dioxide and water to make oxygen for ourselves, we could solve our green energy problem. Scientists are trying to find alternatives, but there wasn't done with it already. Respiration also needs a series of enzymes when they need to rejoin.
Okay, I'm going to pause that to kind of explain what he just said. In other words, there is no other way to break down this, to use the sunlight energy other than through photosynthesis. We have not found a way to bypass the fact that all of our energy starts with the producers or the autotrophs. They are important. Without them, we don't get the energy. Okay, that's what he was saying. It hasn't been discovered yet how to bypass that step of getting energy from plants.
A series of reactions takes place in so-called mitochondria in the cells of plants and animals. Humans and most animals, their blood transports the oxygen from the and the digested food cells. There, the food reacts. Blood takes the carbon dioxide. Plants also respire, but you only notice it in the dark because in the sunlight they release more oxygen from photosynthesis than they use in respiration. But think of the roots and the seeds which are hidden from the sun. Pause the video and think how the roots and the seeds get energy.
Okay. The important thing to remember here is plants make their own food, store it, And then all the rest of the activities like growing roots and growing more leaves and growing taller, all of that requires them to carry out respiration to release the energy that they have just stored up and allow these systems to go. Okay, so plants do both. A lot of times we have a tendency to say plants do photosynthesis and animals do respiration. Plants do both. Okay, and as he said, they tend to, if you did this in biology, you learned that there's a light and a dark reaction. So in the daytime, while the sun is shining, they do more photosynthesis, but in the dark, they are doing respiration.
The answer is that they need a constant supply of oxygen, which means that the soil must be full of air, not water. Roots need sugars sent down. Seeds have enough of air. Respiration of food is similar to combustion. In both cases, oxygen is added to carbon dioxide. Now, in respiration, the reaction happens in normal whereas combustion no only takes place in
Okay. Ethan made an interesting comment. I'm sure plants don't think that they're boring. They turn. If you ever have plants in your house, and you know that if you don't rotate them, they grow towards the light and then turn it, and then they grow towards the light again. So they move. We don't think they move, but they move. But it's true, they do stay in the same spot all the time unless you move them. But I don't know if the plant is bored. I wouldn't say the plant is bored. Okay, it's happy doing what it is designed to do. All right, we got 2 minutes left to class. These are what do you call it? Flashcards. So take a few minutes from the time that's left to just go through the flashcards. All right, so what is needed for respiration? You need oxygen. We inhale oxygen for respiration. What is ATP? And I asked you to write down ATP on your equation for respiration. ATP, yes, would be energy or cellular energy. So make sure, and this is only in cells. We don't have ATP outside of cells, okay? Do autotrophs need to carry out cellular respiration? Good question. Where are you paying attention? Do autotrophs. So what's an autotroph? Which organisms are autotrophs? Okay, they feed themselves. And which organisms are feeding themselves? Plants. Thank you. Thank you. Got two people listening to me. All right. And so then it says, do they need cellular respiration? Why or why not? So answer that question. Yeah, the answer is yes. Why? And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put that on a quiz question. So make sure to see if y'all were paying attention. Because they use it to make their own food. Thank you, Imani and Aiden. All righty. One last question. What is needed for photosynthesis to occur? All right, for photosynthesis, you need sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water. All right, so on Monday, we'll talk about these and then in terms of how they are related to our energy system. Okay, you all have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Thank you.